Welcome back, everyone. So what we're going to be doing in this video is creating basic textures for this using photographs that we find from textures.com. We're not going to just completely grab a texture and throw it right on this object. We're going to modify those so that it actually works for us in the way that we need it to. So the way that we are going to set all this stuff up from the last video, we have our UVs that were created, and we now have, let me just change my background color so you can see that. Remember, Alt B will change your background colors. So I don't like black to be there, it's a little bit too crazy. So gray, that's pretty good. We're going to need to save out our UVs, and then we're going to work with this in Photoshop. But before I even jump into there, let's look at our references that I was gathering. So I was looking at tiny houses. I think that's probably the most appropriate version of a house for this little guy here. And while I was doing that, I started looking at different images of tiny houses like I talked about earlier, and I came up with some ideas on how I might want to try and texture this thing. I'm really into this look of the wood siding with the kind of grayish blue tint to the paint and that bright white on all of the accents. So I'm going to try and emulate that idea. I'm also going to try to emulate the idea of the I kind of like the way that door looks. So again, I was just right clicking and going to copy, went into Photoshop and threw in a bunch of different references. So this is the way that I like to work, and you should be working as well for trying to generate a lot of different ideas. This is our starting point. And so with that being said, now I kind of have some marching orders. I know that I want to have some siding like this. Maybe I want to have some accent like shingles or something like that underneath the roof. And so if we look at kind of where that would be on this, maybe I do want to have some differentiation in here. The main thing we don't want to do is just throw some siding on here and throw a some shingles on and call it a day. We really want to build this thing out so it feels like it's actually like a living, it's living in the real world. So with that being said, let's look at what we can take from textures.com. Now you're going to need an account for this. So make sure that you create an account. It says you have 15 credits a day. That is basically like your money, although it's not really money. It's just how many downloads you're allowed to do. I think they ended up doing this at one point due to the fact that they had a lot of people that were going on the server and just downloading tons of stuff all the time. Plus, this forces you to get into premium credits if you run out. We will not run out for what I'm doing today. You'll notice there's a lot of different things that we can look for. If you need to have some assistance for finding things, you always go to the bottom, go to the photo textures here, and then we can look for different types of pieces that we might need, like wood. If I click on that, I have all sorts of things that are coming up. So there's planks, there's rough, there's tree bark, a lot of cool things. I'm actually going to just use a keyword here and type in siding. Let's see if that comes up with something. It does. Now these are actually textures. I don't really want to use these textures that are created. If I scroll down, I can find images of siding, and I can use these as my starting points for my textures. I think this would be a great way to start. I'm not going to let the colors influence my decisions if I don't like them. I'm looking really for the detail in my materials, and I'm looking to see, does this tell the story I want this to say? The main thing to be aware of is that our textures, if they're old, they're going to say it's an old house. If they're new, they're going to tell you it's a brand new house that was built. So it's really smart to try to figure out the theme. You don't want to have some old rotten wood next to a brand new bright white painted chunk of siding. You want everything to kind of feel cohesive. So looking at some of these things, I'm kind of getting some inspiration kind of getting some cool ideas on how I can create some siding. And I also know that I can generate siding pretty easily in Photoshop by doing that on my own. So now that I'm looking through here, I kind of like how this one looks. I'm going to use that, and I'm going to say, okay, if my texture is going to be at the end of this whole thing, that's going to be like a 1024 by 1024. We're starting at 2048 by 2048, but we can always reduce that. I don't need to download massive texture sizes for this. I can make smaller ones work. Like this one right here, I can make that work. So if I were to take this and I'm going to grab, I think that that's actually pretty good right here. I'm going to grab this one. The reason why I think that for me this one works right here is because this one's got some dings on it. It's got some chip paint. Same thing right here. I want it to look like it's a believable texture, but I don't want it to have that much of a sense of age to it. So this is saying it's a seamless texture too, which is nice. You can press preview on that, and it should show me when it duplicates over and over again that this is considered seamless. I can see the seams, so it's okay. I could fix those seams later on. So I'm going to use that. I'm actually going to hit download, and I've downloaded that. So that's going over to my stuff that I have that for my folder. So I'm going to make sure right now it's actually just going to my downloads. I need to put that in to my projects, and so for me that's going to be my building textures. So I'm going to make a new folder for myself, and I'm going to call this 3D, or no, I'm going to call this photo references, or even better, let's call this texture references. All right, so now that I have this, just gonna left click, whoop, that's what's always fun when that happens. So let's just reduce that size there. Okay, left click and drag that, and there we go. Okay, so that's a starting point. Now that we have that in there, let's also save out our UVs. I'm going to press our UV snapshot and make that a PNG. Give it a home. I swear I had this set to my projects at this point, but for whatever reason, it's not going there. So if you're noticing it's going to somewhere else, like this is actually going to Isaac. So this is because I was looking at his work earlier. So I didn't set my project since I last worked on that. So let's do that right now. I'm going to go into my project window and digital applications, building textures, accept. And now if we click on UVs, UV and snapshot, okay, it's still misbehaving. I'm going to ignore that for now and just go into building texture. Okay, there's where it's supposed to be. And UVs. So let's go into, let's say that this is an image. We'll call that UVs. And hit apply. Now before I hit apply, I can change the edge color. So maybe the white isn't going to be great if I'm going to be painting white. Now I can always change that in Photoshop, but you can always change the colors of your setups by doing that inside of the UV snapshot. I'm going to hit apply, close. I don't think I said a IFF file, buddy. Okay, PNG, we'll bring that back. All right, and now hit apply. Okay, so now it's the proper folder or proper file that I should have. So now I should have, okay, good. This is my texture references, and let's see, where did my file sneak off to here? Okay, so I have my UV saved out. I know they're in the folder that they're supposed to be in, and I have my texture references I can start to pull from. So I'm going to go into Photoshop now and go to File, Open. And this is going to be actually under my digital applications for the animator, building textures, and now under my images I have UVs. Okay, let's open that. Oh, I can't see anything. That's because they're small. That's okay. We can go into our layers. I'm going to double click, name that UVs, and now I'm going to make another layer underneath that, and I'm going to fill that in. So I'm just going to make that white for now. So I'm going to go to Edit Fill or Shift F5, and now I have this. And now I can kind of see a little bit better, but again, to improve that, we'll go to Effects on our UVs, and I'm going to add a stroke, and a 1 is fine. So I'm going to use that. All right, now I have my UVs. I can start to work with this. Now, again, it's important to be able to know, okay, here's reference. There's different type of siding that's available, that's out there. What am I going to go for? How big is my door? These are all important things to be asking yourself for your model. This is a small little house. The doorway probably wouldn't be very big. So it probably would be maybe about that big. I would maybe have a window right here. So I'm going to use references like this to allow myself to kind of use proper scaling for this. So I'm going to be eyeballing it, but it's going to help me to figure out how big certain pieces are going to be. So the first thing I want to do, I'm going to go to File, Place. I'm going to do an embedded. Linked allows for you to place an image, but it's always going to be modifiable. Place embedded is going to allow for you to grab something and throw it into Maya. So you can't change this. All right, I'm going to scale this up a little bit, and I'm going to bring it down and hit enter. Okay, so that was my first thing I did. I added an image in Photoshop of some siding. Super exciting, right? So that's kind of cool. Let's, for the sake of just being able to see this, go save as, and I'm going to save this as my building color. And I'm going to just call it the official thing for what you should be naming it. So I'm putting my last name, building color. And so now we have that. And I'm going to go into Maya. And then I'm going to use this time a blend. And I'm going to go into color, file, and source images. I'll just go to images for now. Should probably put it under source. But for now, I'm going to keep it there. So images. I am tired. Trying to knock out tutorials for 5 classes. All online. It's been great. Okay, let's see what we can do here. Okay, is it beautiful? Let's find out. No, it's not. And that's because shading, hardware texturing. And now, wow. Submit this to me. This is exactly what I want. No, please don't do that. Okay, we have texture. It's on here, so we know things are working, things are linking properly. So that's great. If we want to do this officially, I saved this thing in the wrong folder. I should put this in source images. So we'll put that there, and I will relink this file to where it's supposed to be. So I'm going to change that so it's not under images and it's going to be under source images, just to keep things official. Okay. So now I've got this bit of texture on here. It's not going to the bottom. It's not going across. Let's see if we can fix that. First thing I'm going to do is name this. So I'm going to call this siding. and I'm going to hit Control T. That's going to allow for me to scale. So if I hold down Shift and scale, I can scale it across the screen. I'm going to scale it all the way over end and hit Enter. Now let's zoom in. Okay. One thing I can notice, and it's not that big of a deal, but notice I've got nail holes that were in this texture. When I hit Control T and I hold down Shift and I scale this, those nail holes are going to scale. And you can see that right here. Not very good. You can also see them some other places there. So that's kind of an issue for our texture. Now, pros and cons. I could take this, if I use the V key to be able to move stuff around, and I hold down Alt and drag, and then I hold down Shift while I'm doing that. You're going to need to practice this move. So again, I'm going to back this up. Hold down the V key, hold down the left mouse button and drag, and while you're dragging, push down the Shift key, and this will allow for you to duplicate your texture. So now I've got two of them. This works sometimes if the texture is not having anything major on it. If I had like this like smudge right here, it's going to show up right there again. So we always want to make sure that whatever we're doing for repeating textures, it's not super noticeable that we actually repeated it. Also, if you're repeating super small textures over and over again, what's the point in UV unwrapping all of this space? We want to be able to use it so that way everything on here should be sort of unique. For this application here, where it's just this background information, which is just going to be the siding, I think that's going to be okay for me. So what I'm going to do now, let me delete that layer. I don't need that one. I have two of these, and I can see this white line. What I'm going to do is press the V key and then use my arrow left or arrow right to try and reduce that line. And you'll notice that went right away. Good. Now that I have this, I'm actually going to right click on this top layer and merge down. So you'll notice merge down isn't available to me right now. And that is because this layer, it needs to be rasterized. So I'm going to just right click rasterize layer, and that little icon's going to go away. And now if I right click here, merge down, this siding is one image. I'm going to move this over again one more time. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key, move the arrow key over. You'll notice it duplicated. Now if I hold down Shift, I can drag that with my mouse without getting that to go in the wrong direction on the vertical axis. So now that I have this, I have these. I'm going to again right click, merge down, and now I have some siding. But it's a bit sloppy. It's going over where it needs to be. I should tuck this under the UVs layer, by the way. I'm also going to lock it down so I can't mess with it. So I'm going to turn that lock. You can see that it's there. Now, let's clean this up. I want to make sure that my house is easy for me able to build it out and not getting digital paint in areas I don't want it to be. So one of the first things I'm going to do is create a group, and we'll call this house back, because I think this was the back of our house I was working on, and we'll call that color. I'm going to drag the siding into here. Now that I have that, I'm also going to use a tool. I'm going to grab my polygon lasso tool and click and drag around here. So I held down the Shift key to get hard edges. Or no, I didn't. Hold on. Yes, if you want to have a hard edge or a vertical, horizontal, or diagonal, hold down Shift. If not, you can just click, 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 and get the polygon lasso tool to work for you. So I'm going to back up to when I had this. So now that I have this, I'm just going to go ahead and press this button right here, which is going to add a layer mask. And now anywhere that I paint inside of this, it's not going to go beyond the confines of that selection. So this allows me to kind of work with this within this area. So that's good. So now that I have this, I'm actually going to duplicate one more time. I'm going to hold down the Alt key and press the down. And now with Shift held down and arrow, I'm just going to move this down and move that into position with the arrow up key until I see something like that. Okay, good. All right, now that I have all this, I'm going to merge again these down. So I have siding and I have this layer that's doing nothing. Again, make sure you're labeling everything. You guys, I want to give you proper critiques, and it's really chaos for me to try and get in here and have a clue what 100 different layers are. So make sure you're organizing this stuff. Now I'm going to duplicate this one more time. I'm going to hold down the V key and arrow key, the Alt. I'm going to press the Alt key and sorry, let's back this train up. I'm going to press the V key to use the move tool. Hold down Alt and arrow key up to make another duplicate. You'll notice it made a siding copy again. And if I hold down the Shift, oh, cool. This is giving me more, but it's only staying in the confines of the house back color group. So I'm not going outside of the rules that I've set up for myself. So now I have this. And isn't it beautiful? No, it's not. We're getting there though. So what's cool about all this stuff, I'm going to again merge this down. I have this. I can duplicate and rotate that for over here too. So I can recycle this base texture. And so that's very helpful for me. Now that I have something like this, this is kind of a weird color. It's kind of flat. Again, if I'm looking at references, there's some cool things going on these model or these houses, and I don't really have that going on here yet. So I really want to jazz this up in a way that it feels alive. It feels like people lived there. This feels like, hey, you took a picture off the internet and it looks like garbage. So first thing I should probably do is think about some details. So windows and doors, those are pretty important, I think, for people to be able to get in and have sunlight and stuff like that. So let's type in house door and see if we can find something that works for what we're doing. And I don't know why their internets are a little bit slow today. Okay. First rule of texturing when using textures.com. People pick, I don't know why students do this to me or to themselves or whoever. They'll grab like something like this that clearly doesn't match the aesthetic of whatever the house is that they're working on and slap that on there or something like this. And it just, what are you doing? The reference that we were working on. So if I go into here, nope, not that. But if I go into Photoshop, I'm going for like this cute little house. I'm not looking for these weird, like city doors that are there. So I'm trying to make something that looks nice, that makes sense. I kind of like these doors. I kind of like those doors. And so that's sort of a door that could work for me. It's got some information on here that I don't need though. And let's see what else we can find. That's sort of okay, but I don't see that matching 100% either. I think what I'm going to go with here, we're getting better ones. Again, I am going to be evaluating your choices of textures as much as the techniques you guys are applying. So please choose things that make sense aesthetically. If I can't find any here, and I'm not finding anything that I like, so I'm going to go and I'm going to look at what my references were doing for me. And there's some ideas that I can come up with that would work. And let's just type in house door on Google's. And what did that do? Oh, it made a bunch of images of doors come up. What a cool idea. So these are likely all copyright. So let's tell this thing for my usage rights, labeled for use with modification. Okay, cool. So now it's going to give me some, well, it looks like all of textures.com is coming up first, which is kind of terrible. But there's something maybe okay. Getting a lot of textures.com on here. So let's change this one more time. I'm going to do labeled for non-commercial use with modification. That should widen the net of what we got. And I can see some stuff that might work for me. That I wouldn't use because I have a highlight here and then all of this is in shadow. That's sort of okay. I like this door, the shape of it, but I have shadows on there. So I think what we're going to do is I'm going to copy this. So right click copy. And I'm going to go into here. I'm going to hit paste. So Control V. We'll put this door right there so I can sort of see it. All right. Now that I have this, what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to tear off this layer. So I'm going to left click drag and then scale it down. Okay. And now I have this sort of floating here for me to be able to look at for reference. Now, I'm going to do something interesting. I'm going to go into Photoshop and I'm going to make a new group. This group I'm going to call door. And the thing I'm going to build with this group is I'm going to make a rectangle. And if I left click and drag down, just kind of eyeballing the size of that, I think this is okay. I'm going to use this as the start of a door. So what kind of door do I want to use? Well, I know a lot of the references I was looking at, they were kind of an orangey, like wood tone. I don't like that salmon color at all. I'm not going to use that. But I'm just kind of, I think I'm going to use like a wood tone on this. But to do that, I'm actually going to block some stuff out first. So that's kind of what I'm doing right here. This is an example of building something from scratch in Photoshop. So I have this, moving this over and moving this so it's not taking up too much space. I'm now going to zoom in. Okay, I want this to feel like it's inset, and I'm going to put some edgings around all this as well. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a inner shadow. Now that's intense. So first thing, let's get the shadow so it's top down, and I'm going to reduce my distance, and I'm going to reduce the size. So it's just something like that. Don't pay attention to the outside of this. That's okay. I'm going to hit OK. Now, I am going to create a rectangle that I'm going to put right around there. And I can't see it yet. I know it's there. There it is. I'm going to hit Control T. And I'm going to reshape that a little bit more. All right, let me put that back. Now I know there's the center. So I'm going to use some little tricks here to make sure that I can duplicate this and it makes sense. I'm going to keep this one right here, and I'm going to make a bevel and emboss. And to do this bevel and emboss, I don't want the technique to be on smooth. I want it to be on chisel hard. And I also think right now my light is set at an angle where it's top down. I'm going to turn off use global light and put it so it's almost smack dab in the middle. And I'm also going to reduce the size a bit. Now all of a sudden, hey, I can't see it, it's too light. That's okay, because what I can do is increase the opacity of the shadow. And you'll notice it's starting to pop up a little bit more. Okay. I need, I think, a little bit more distance on that. And let's increase the, reduce my soften and increase the depth a little bit. Okay, so right now it's an inner bevel. We could do outer bevel, emboss, pillow emboss, and stroke emboss. So stroke seems to have disappeared. It's probably due to the fact that I have these sizes and all of this are a little bit different, but I'm not even going to use that one. I'm going to try pillow emboss here. And notice right away, hey, you've got some similar details to this that we can use to build out shapes like what we see right here. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to hit OK. And now that I have this, and I know when I'm moving this around, you notice there's this little pink line on here. That's telling me that you're in the middle of your the object. So that's nice of the main door. I'm actually going to use my arrow keys. I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 maybe. I just know that that's 8 away from the middle. And now that I did that, I'm actually going to hold down the Alt key, left click, and drag another one down. And then I'm going to do that one more time. Now, I know they're not exactly the same. That's okay. Rather than doing this process over and over again, I did this by duplicating that. I have the second one. If I hit Control T and Shift drag this down, hit Enter, notice that my emboss is still the same size. That's what's nice about using an effect for this. So I can do this again. I am going to hit Control T, drag from the bottom, holding down Shift, go down, and hit Enter. And now if I look at the model that are the three different rectangles I created, so if I call that door, and these are the details here, that's good. So now that I have these, I'm going to hold down Alt and right mouse button or right arrow key, and what that ended up doing for me is allowed for me to duplicate those. Now I'm going to go 8 from the middle, so I was just left click dragging these around. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and okay. Maybe these are a little bit too wide. So now that I see that these are symmetrical from both sides from the middle, they're still too wide. Because notice this gap right here. Pretty easy to fix. I have all 3 of these selected. So again, select that one, hold down Shift, select these, hit Control T, and let's see if we hold down Alt and Shift. Notice that's scaling this in. So you notice my width is going down. I've got a width right now. It's declaring that. You'll notice it says 36. Okay, that's good. I'm going to grab these. Do the same thing. Control T. Hold down Alt and Shift. And I'm going to scale that down. And that is also a 36. Okay. So I have this door. It's not really a door yet, but it's looking a lot more like a door than when we started. Cool stuff that we can do to this. Let's add a doorknob. So first thing I want to do before I do that, I'm going to hit Control G, and we'll call these door insets. Now, I'm showing examples that don't necessarily have to apply to what you're working on. This house is the one I'm doing. You could do all sorts of different, door styles and all that. And as a matter of fact, if you're working on the factory, I shouldn't be seeing a door on that like this. So use your judgment on what you want to do. If I make another layer, and now if I go into my shape, I'm going to use a rounded, the ellipse tool. I'm going to left click and holding down shift, drag out. Now I have this shape. I am now going to do a color overlay, and let's even sample let me go more yellow. I'm going to say that that's going to be the start of the color. Yeah, let's use this as the start. Now I'm going to try something like satin. And what I'm doing is just trying to get, so satin can kind of give a little bit of a gloss to things. This isn't really, it's probably not going to work super well for this type of a shape. Let's try a drop shadow. Right now that's set to purple for me, so that's not good. So let's go more of a orange brown. And let's reduce the spread on that. And reduce the size. And then move that distance up a little bit more. Okay. Cool. Now, let's add some bevel and emboss to this. Okay. That's okay. It feels very, it was like Penguin Club digital fake 3D, so we don't really want it to look like that. I'm going to change the highlight color because it shouldn't be white. It would probably be more of a yellow if it's going to be on metal like brass. And I can even change that so it's not screen, maybe it's overlay. Okay. Now I got a little bit of a creep going on the shadow upwards above the knob. Actually, that's not even it. I noticed what it is. It's bevel and emboss because I had the pillow emboss on. Let's go inner bevel and increase the size of that. There we go. And then now we can soften it as well. So by doing that, we kind of made it a rounded knob. So that's pretty good. Drop shadow, again, drop some of that distance down a little bit so it feels like it's actually 3D. And now that I have that, let's add a little bit more definition to this. I don't have a lot of pixels to do this with, so just a little bit of extra something will make this feel less digital fake flat. So let's just duplicate this layer. Control T. And my prompt went off screen. Okay, I have this one. Control T. And let's say that that's where I want that to be. And I'm going to hit enter. Now that I have this, I can change the way that my drop shadow is working on it. I'm even going to just turn that one off. And I'm going to change my bevel and emboss so it's just doing something else on there. Okay, I think actually what I'm going to do is turn that off, and I'm going to use a stroke. So if I go to stroke, and I'm going to change this to like a brown. And I'm going to turn that blend mode to multiply and reduce the opacity of that. This is just giving the perception of like a surface to it. It doesn't need to be super detailed, because notice I'm working with really limited pixels. So I'm even getting a lot of skew on that because it's just such a small amount. But if I zoom out here, it just makes for a little bit more of an interesting shape here. Now, this doesn't look finished in any way. It looks gross, like a digital dollhouse. We can fix that. And what I'm going to do is go to textures.com again, and I'm going to look for a chunk of wood. So finished wood. And now, okay, nothing wants to come up. Let's scroll down. These are all textures, so we're gonna go, I think I could even work with bamboo. I think this one's probably even, yeah, let's work with that. I'm gonna download this one. And again, we gotta drag it to where it's going. Their website is terribly slow tonight. Alright, dragging that in. And let's start working with this one. I'm going to drag this in. Super tiny, that's okay. I'm going to hold down shift while I rotate so it snaps vertically. And now I'm going to drag this over my object, and now I'm going to drag it up. So I've got something like this. Okay. I've got a chunk of wood over this door. I also have my doorknob right here. I need to group these. I'm going to hit Control G, doorknob, and I'm going to move this up. Now I've got this, and I'm going to turn this into, let's try overlay or darken first. Nope. Let's try multiply. So what I'm going through here is the various different blend modes that we can do. And you can see some of them are interesting and other ones are pure chaos. So we want to find something, and in most cases, overlay, multiply, screen, those are like my best friends for mixing for a lot of things. The problem is that when you start to do this, it may be a little bit too intense. So what we could do is taking this texture, I'm going to go to my adjustments, and I'm going to start messing with, let's first try brightness and contrast. And then before I do any brightness and contrast updates on here, I want to hold down Alt and left click in between this layer and that layer. What that's going to do for me is make sure it's only affecting this layer. If I don't do that, everything's going to be modified underneath it. So I'm going to change contrast, and okay, that's interesting. Let's take these door insets and move them above this. Let's also turn this to multiply. Okay. It looks the same as what I just did. However, now that I did that, I'm going to duplicate that group. Notice all of a sudden it's more pronounced. So that's a lot better to see these. However, these insets may be using the wrong color for the shadows. They may be using like a black, so I'm not sure if I like how that's reacting with this. My other big thing is that wood grain is super pronounced. So I'm going to try to knock back the contrast of that wood a little bit more. And okay. So now that I'm here, that door, which was just that white box that I worked on, if I go into this and I'm going to do a color overlay, I'm going to change that to like an orangey yellow. Okay. Now that I have that, interesting. There's no sense of shadow. There's really, it's flat. So one of the ways that we can make textures actually work for us, we should put a gradient from the bottom up for shadow. I do that near the end. And then we also should be thinking about the trim. So the trim of an exterior door, if I open this up more, it's causing a lot of shadows. You notice there's wood on top, and then there's that white trim around the edge. That's sort of what I want to do. So to do that on this one, that's pretty easy. I'm just going to make a new layer, and I'm going to go into here, and let's actually look on Google what I'm going to turn off my filtering because I actually just want to see what these doors are doing. So I can emulate this very easily. That's an easy thing to do. And same thing with this one. So we got a box that goes all the way around, and then inset box, and then there's the door. So think about it this way. Instead of just making it so it's one shape on the outside, we have that complexity because we have another one there and then the box. So that allows for us to have just a little bit more finesse to our piece. So I'm gonna do something like that, something similar. I kind of like this one where I have that little bit of an edge going across the top. So pretty easy to do. I am going to create some shapes. So rectangle tool, and I want to actually go over this a little bit. And so there's one, and Alt right arrow key, drag, and then I'm holding on Shift to move faster over here. All right, there's another side. I'm gonna make a top, and now let's say scale that. There's this piece. This may be way too large. I think I'm getting a little bit too close to crazy mode here. So if this is too big, I'm gonna move this one up a little bit, and let's play around with the settings on this. I'm gonna go to Edit, Transform, and let's try Skew. So if I skew over here, it's 12.3, and then over here, I'm gonna do the, yeah, let's say about 12.3. Okay. Now if I bring that down, that's interesting. It looks flat right now, so let's fix that. I'm gonna use, I'm gonna make sure these are all in another group too. I'm gonna call that trim. I'm gonna take this and do drop shadow, because I want it to be making shadow go on the back, and I want it to go on the door. I don't want to use purple. I should use an orange. And I also should probably reduce the size of it. It's a little too intense. That's way too intense. Okay. So there's that, and then playing with the spread of it. There we go. Okay, that's good. Bevel and emboss. Technique, chisel hard. That's gigantic, so we'll drop that. And for depth, there we go. So notice I got depth. The higher that is, the darker it gets. And then with the size, I want to bring that down to something like that. All of a sudden now you have this sense of dimensionality to it that I think works pretty well for it. So I like that. How do I make that work over here? Well, let's not do that all over again. Let's just right click on this, go to copy, layer style, paste, layer style, and now I have the other side. And now for the top, let's try to do that again. Paste, layer style. Okay, that's where we're running into some trouble because our drop shadow now is making it look like it's on top of that other shape. So if that's not what we're trying to do, and it isn't, we're trying to make this feel cohesive, let's try something different here. I'm going to turn off the effects, and I'm actually going to turn that shape off. I'm going to sculpt this up a little bit by just hitting Control T, and I'm going to bring that over to that edge and over to this edge. Enter. Okay. I'm going to merge this down. Right click, merge visible. Oh, not merge visible. Right click, merge. Oh, this doesn't want to. Let's rasterize that layer. Right click, rasterize this layer and this layer. Since this was a shape, it was a smart object, we had to do that first. And now that I have this, I'm going to merge this down. And I'm going to merge this one down. And I merged it to the wrong one because I'm tired. Hold on. There's that one. There's that one. All right, let's merge down. Bring this above it and try it. Merge down. Okay. For the most part, it worked. I think it's because I rasterized some of these pieces here. Let me just back this up. Okay, so I have these. Let me turn off effects before I do this. Okay, so turning off the effects, flatten this out, and then I am gonna rasterize all of these and then merge them. And now they're this. I'm going to paste my layer style. So now I have something like this. Okay, let me bring back this piece. And I'm also going to put that on. So paste layer style. Let me drop the amount of drop shadow on that. Now, my drop shadow, this is bizarre. It's no, that's working pretty well. It's my bevel and emboss. This is what's causing this. Again, hopefully as an artist, as you're looking at this, you want to vomit up digital sparkles. You should never think that this gray is okay. I told you guys, if you learn anything, black gray for shadows is not okay. It should be being influenced by the color of the sun. It should be influenced by the color of the shingles and the things that are about not shingles, the siding. It should not be influenced by, hey, I'm a computer, let's make shadows, and we're making black shadows. That's just terrible. So let's fix that. I would have caught that earlier if I wasn't sleepy time tea mode. So okay, so I've got something like this. This is coming along. Now I deviated a little bit because instead of just using reference images, I wanted to show you guys how we can build out dimensionality within our models, and doing so by just using the drop shadow and working with some different shapes here. The cool part about all this is if I take this door and move it over, so now I have that group, the whole thing can come with me. I can also hold down the Alt button and left click, making sure auto select is off, That is a demon. Hold down Alt and left click, and now I've got another door. Why you would need 2 of those, I don't know for this little house, but that's sort of how we can work with that. So we're getting a nice build up for this house. And again, this whole part was made from scratch. Let's test that. I'm gonna go to File, Save Scene As, and we're gonna save that to where it's supposed to be. And now I am going to test what that looks like inside of Photoshop. Or, geez, I'm tired. Inside of here. So let's open this up, and ooh and ah at the cheesiness of a little door that's on my house. So cool. I'm not close to done yet, but I'm showing you guys different steps here. The main things are going to be very similar, putting in some windows and doing some color adjustments and some other stuff. So I'll have some more videos on that soon. The thing I want to touch upon is the idea of refreshing Photo or Maya. Now that you guys are home and we're not using the animation lab, you can actually set this up and set it and forget it, which is, I'm sure you're all going to be happy about this. Remember that underneath your files and projects, we can have image files automatically reload updated image files. Just click on that underneath. Again, Windows, Settings and Preferences. Down here under Files and Projects, press that, hit Save. That means every time that you're saving in Photoshop, if I'm working in here and maybe I pass out at my computer and I put some Z's on here, which is very possible. Oh, look, Z's are here. Isn't that nice? So that's, you don't have to think about it. So that's the cool part about that. So we got a lot of other stuff to go into. I'm going to show you guys how to make this grimy. I'm going to also modify these siding pieces, put some windows in, but I wanted to touch on constructing pieces by pulling some references in, using drop shadows and shapes, and a lot of that is how we'll continue with this. I can add siding on the edge, or trim on the edges of this. I'm going to put some water and moisture on the edge, maybe some moss, and some shadows I'll bake in as well, and then I'll use all that data to allow myself to have bump maps and stuff like that too. So we're getting there. I will update another one within the next couple days as well.